Well, hello. I thought I'd do a quick video here this afternoon. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon. It's about 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I had a nice surprise in the mail this morning. I had ordered some paint protector film from a distributor here in Canada. This is a 3M Scotchgard no chip paint protection film. It's quite often now with many automobile manufacturers applied at the factory to the front of cars to protect against rock chips. As you may be aware, especially in Europe, more and more manufacturers are being forced by the regulatory bodies, rightfully so, to start using water-based automotive paints. The challenge with using water-based automotive paints compared to the traditional solid-based urethane paints that we use here, are more prevalent here in North America, is that they're softer. And because they're softer, they're more prone to damage, or so I've been told. So what typically happens now in Europe, and I know Ferrari does this, and I know some, Volkswagen does this on some of their models too, they apply this paint protection film. Now, as you can see, I purchased a roll, 8-foot roll. It's 12 inches by 8 feet long, and I'm going to cut up strips and apply it to the front of my new RT. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that and how I've done it. I've applied this stuff, I think, to about 6 or 7 vehicles now, mostly cars. I do typically put bits and pieces on my motorcycles. I do find, especially with these sport touring bikes, when you swing your leg over, quite often, especially with passengers, you'll nick the corner of the hard bags when you bring your leg around, and it leaves nasty marks. Sometimes it damages the paint, sometimes it just leaves a paint scuff, sometimes it just leaves a strip of rubber from the sole of your shoe. So what this stuff does, it's thick and strong. It'll protect against that, and you can replace it. This here is about, I think, about $6 a foot, so it's not very expensive. It's a lot easier to replace than repainting the tail bag, or the saddlebag. Also, it's designed initially for the front of cars to protect against rock chips. So I'm going to put a few pieces on the front of the bike, and I'll show you where I'm going to show you when I do that. I'm also going to put some pieces here along the side of the tank where my knees typically touch. And from experience, 30 years of riding bikes now, I find that the way I ride, I tend to squeeze the tank with my knees. Sometimes that can cause too scuffing, almost cloudiness in the paint, too scuffing areas. So I'm going to put some on there too. This stuff is absolutely great. I've only used this particular brand, although I'm led to believe now there are similar brands out there. But this 3M stuff is excellent. It stretches, it doesn't discolor over time. I've had it on white cars, I've had it on silver cars, black cars. You can see it on when you go up close. Though a good job typically won't have any bubbles or cloudiness to it. Although there is sometimes some initial cloudiness when you apply it. It stretches, it can conform to compound shapes, to normal simple bends, but to more compound bends. It pulls off and it doesn't damage the paint. This was specifically designed, there's a lot of research that went into this product, and it was designed for the purpose I'm going to be using it. So it won't damage the paint. It pulls off, it doesn't leave residue behind when you do pull it off. I've had it on cars after 4 years. Now, mind you, I'm in Canada, but through winter, summer, salt in the roads that we have here, the pebbles and dirt that they apply to the roads for traction, all that kind of stuff it's resistant to. You can polish it, you can wax it, you can clean it. It's great. And if you've never applied this, you might pick up a few tips from me or stuff I've learned the hard way. If you were always wondering how to apply Decals to vehicles, it's the same process. So you typically, and I'll show you in a minute here, you clean the vehicle, you spray down the area with a soapy solution, which I'll talk about, and you put this on place and stretch it into position. It's probably, the first bit of advice I'll start with now is that the first time I used it, I bought a bulk roll and then cut the pieces I needed. As I got more and more proficient at it, I found I was buying the kits, the pre-cut kits from companies like Expel.com, and there's a few other ones online. And I don't recommend you going right out and buying a pre-cut kit. I do recommend starting with bulk material, either 1 or 2 feet of it for $10 or $15. Try, put it on, get the hang of it. And then once you understand the simple concept of stretching and placing and tacking and moving, then go out and buy a kit if you want to do your car, if you want to do your bike. In fact, Expel offers bike kits. They offer a kit for this bike, which is about $300. Has lots and lots of pieces. I'm not going to put on that much film. I'm going to put on significantly less. So this here roll, as I mentioned, was I think I had 8 feet of it, and it was $8 a foot, I believe. So it was $64 for this. And this will do everything I need to do, plus have some left over for anything else I need to do. So, stick around. Well, to begin, this area of the bike obviously is going to be where we're going to get most of the rock chips or most damage from flying debris. Headlight area, this panel here, and this panel here. You'll notice on the RT there's a black molded plastic piece. I'm not going to put any film on that. I'm sure you could. But that plastic is softer and more resilient to strikes. The painted areas are where we're going to get chips, pulls, scuffs, bug marks, that sort of thing. I'm not going to put anything on the windshield, obviously. The headlight on this bike is very expensive. And if it was to take a rock chip and damage it, and I wanted to replace it, I'm probably looking at, I'm assuming close to $1,000, maybe more. I haven't priced it, maybe twice that. So I'm going to put a strip on this upper part, and then I'll put a strip on this lower part, okay? I may try to do it in one piece, but I'll, once I get laying the pieces on there, I'll take a look, and if need be, I'll decide at that point what I'm going to do. The bike also has a fender exposed here, which does take some rock chips, but I'm not going to bother too much with that. I have found, I'm not sure why, I guess just from experience, that typically most of the strikes come in this area, of rocks, sand, any other road debris. Anyway, see how that goes. As I mentioned earlier, this part of the bike here is prone to scuffing, just the way I ride, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a strip right here, and I'm going to mark it out with some tape when I get on the bike a little later on. I'll show you how I do that. But just a small strip, basically where my knee hits and rubs. And like I say, from 30 years riding bikes, especially sport bikes, I pinch the tank with my knees, and I found I get cloudiness here if I don't do this. This is what we call a compound curve. So not only is it bent in, it's also bent around like this, so it's much like an inverted ball or concave. So it's a bit more challenging than the front. But you'll see with this material, it's actually with a little trial and error and patience, it works quite nice. This is the reason I bought this film. As I mentioned earlier, swinging a leg over and over and over again. Now, you and I or anybody else might own a bike like this. If you own an RT or perhaps an FJR, Concours, countless bikes out there with hard bags, painted hard bags. You swing your leg over and you catch quite often the sole of your shoe across the top of this. In fact, this bike, I think, because I bought this bike through a dealer, I think the prior owner had done that a few times, and I think they polished it out, just judging by the paint and how smooth it is. But anyway, I'm going to put a strip along the top here and a strip along the bottom. Now you notice this is quite an acute angle here. I could probably do it in one strip, but I'll show you and you'll see how I go through this, and what's involved is that would be quite a complicated bend and stretch to do. So I'm going to do it in 2 strips. I'm going to do a strip along the top, I'll pull it in here, and then I'll do a strip along the front. The reason I would want to strip along the front is because this, when you stand at the front of the bike and look backwards, you can see this is exposed to road debris, rocks, chips, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to put a strip along there too. Anyway, so what we'll see is at the front, it will be the easiest. Halfway along, it'll be a bit more challenging, and this curve here will be very challenging for me. So this would be sort of what the expert would call an intermediate compound curve. Now the real experts in this field, the professionals, the people who do several bikes or cars a day, They can make this stuff do whatever they want, and it's all patience and experience. The material is very forgiving, it's very stretchy, so they can pretty much, well, they could wrap this whole bike up and you wouldn't even know it was covered. Anyway, to get underway, the first thing we got to do is clean the whole bike. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to clean the whole bike, and I'm going to apply a thin coat of wax, not a polishing wax, but just a protective wax, Carnauba, which the manufacturer says isn't such a bad idea. And then we'll start putting the material on after we cut some templates. So first things first, clean the bike. Okay, first things first here. What we need to do is make templates for all the areas we're going to cover. As I mentioned, this bike is going to progressively get harder as we move towards the back. But firstly, since I did buy bulk and I didn't buy a kit, the easiest way I've found to do a template is to use wax paper. Wax paper is something that it's heavy enough that it doesn't fold over and stick on itself. You can see through it, generally speaking, if it's up against a surface. And you can flip it over, use it for both sides, because effectively we're doing mirror images. So when we do one template, it should work for both sides of the bike. So we're going to start up front here. Just watch while I use some tape, pencil, and strips of wax paper, and I'll mark this out. I'll cut it out, lay it down on a table. Use a ruler and some scissors and cut out the piece, and then I'll in turn transfer that to the film. Interesting point I'll mention is that on the leading edge of the bike, it's good practice to curl the film around the leading edge. So that would be this edge here and this edge down here, and that's something I learned from doing cars, is that typically if you're going to do the hood of the car, you would curl the film up around the lip of the hood of the car, because that leading edge actually does take a lot of sand and dirt blasts. So that's what I'm going to do, and you'll see that as I do the template. Okay, as you can see, I've cut out my template. I'm going to use this for both sides of the bike. So I'll put this aside, mark it up, and I'll do the templates for the other two areas. Now, it's important to realize this is not an exact science. A lot of trial and error, and I've only been at this for a few minutes, but this particular area here, I sat on the bike and tried to get an idea as to where my knee would hit. There's no need to cover all the way up to here, I realized. My knee actually only strikes an area, even when I roll up on my toes on the pegs, it only strikes an area about up to here. So I'm going to build in a little bit of safety and actually go up to this area here. By making the pieces smaller and away from this very extreme curve, the piece will actually be easier to put on. I have my templates all cut and I'm ready to roll. Just a few things I wanted to share with you, a few tips before you go forward, things you have to keep in mind. Firstly, clean your hands. I mean, spick and span, no dirt under the nails, no even staining in your finger, in your sort of fingerprint area. That kind of stuff can actually get underneath the adhesive, and it pops up and causes a little air bubble around it. Sort of like getting a piece of dust under the skin on your iPad or something like that. You can really notice it. So clean, clean, clean hands. You can actually handle both sides of the film, even with a sticky adhesive on it, as long as your hands are covered in what we'll refer to as a slip solution, which I'll talk about in just a minute, which is a soap and water solution. Secondly is, if your bike has any chips or areas where the paint is lifted up or poking up, burrs, if you will, paint burrs from aggressive chipping, it's best to either try to polish those down or consider whether or not you want to cover them, simply because they will cause an area of raised film, which usually has a little bubble of air around it. Okay? Same sort of concept. Next thing I want to mention is the solutions. Basically, what we use is we cut our templates, we cut our film into shape, and we slide it around with soap and water, 50% dish soap, 50% water. The film is designed, even the 3M Scotchgard actually recommends that's how you apply. You actually spray the soapy solution on the sticky side of the film. Now, for those people who apply graphics to vehicles or do this every day for a living, that's the way it works. If you've never applied a large decal, it can be a bit counterintuitive. You think it actually, you'd want to start with a dry adhesive, but the adhesive is designed, it's actually a water-soluble adhesive, I think, and it actually soaks in over time. Once you get it placed and stretched, it'll soak in the soap and water into the adhesive and disappear. So it's designed to be used that way. If you go online and you watch videos of people doing this, you'll see them using that solution, soap and water, which they refer to as the slip solution. You spray it on, place it, and then squeegee out the soapy water. And they'll also use an alcohol solution. If you're just starting out, I recommend not using the alcohol solution, simply because the alcohol is designed to absorb the slip solution. So it's kind of like your sticky stuff, and your slip solution or your soap is kind of like your slippery stuff. No need to use the alcohol if you're starting out. You can just use the soap and keep working with it till it's into place, and it'll generally hold once it's there. When you get good at it, or even moderately competent at it, and I don't claim to be very good at it, but I've done 6 or 7 vehicles, 3 or 4 bikes. When you do get good at it, you can use the alcohol solution as a tack. So when you get an area that's set up the way you want, you peel it back quickly, spray the alcohol, slap it back down, squeegee out the alcohol very, very quickly, and it'll stay in place. However, I did learn the very first vehicle I did, I could work all day long with the slip solution and be completely content. It does take longer, it takes a little more patience, because you'll push something, slide something into place, and it'll gradually pull back a little bit. But as you keep pushing it, stretching it, it'll generally stay there over time. I would equate this film material to a very, very thick saran wrap type material. If you were to take a piece of saran wrap and stretch it between your hands, you get those long stretching ripples, if you will. This will do the same sort of thing. However, unlike saran wrap, it will pull itself back in a little bit. It will return to its original shape to a degree, not 100%. And that's what we want. We want it to be stretchy and generally hold a place once we get it into place. The material is designed, as I mentioned, to cover compound curves. So it is designed to be stretched and pulled. Generally speaking, when you lay this down on a surface and you see the edge pulling up in ripples, what you want to do is stretch the middle of the material, and those edge ripples will actually come out. And you'll see what I mean. And back to my original comment, if you use the slip solution, just the slip solution, and don't even bother with the alcohol solution, you'll probably learn quicker how this stuff works and how to play with it, how to make it do what you want it to do. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to do those 3 surfaces, but as I mentioned at the beginning, I will eventually cover maybe not today, maybe tonight, I'll cover the headlight, and I'll cover this front surface here. And what prompted me to mention the rock chip burrs in the paint is, in this particular bike, there's a couple areas where the paint's actually just tiny little pinpricks where the paint's been pulled up by obviously a bigger stone. And I'll have to do something about that before I lay down the film, or else I'll be able to see the film far off. When you come up close, you'll be able to see the film regardless, because you can see its edge. But generally speaking, it's very shiny stuff. It's a great surface, so I highly recommend it. So, first things first, wash your hands. The bike's already clean, only took a few minutes. I've spent about 20 minutes cutting these templates out of wax paper. Now I'm going to go transfer them to the film. I'm going to cut mirror images, one for each side. So I'll add 3 templates, I'll have 6 pieces. Be back at you. Okay, I'll take a little break there just to do some errands, but I came back at this. See this panel here, I've laid on. Essentially, I've mixed up a solution of soap and water, 50-50, just dish soap, and shook it up in the spray bottle, sprayed my hands, peeled off the backing, of the film and sprayed the back of the film. So my hands were soapy. The adhesive side of the film is soapy. Laid it on the panel that I want to cover, slid it around. It slides quite easily. And then started using the tips of my fingers to squish out the soapy water behind the film on the adhesive side, and placing it and moving it as I do. And like I say, this stuff is it's quite warm out here now. It's about 85 Fahrenheit, about 27 degrees Celsius. I've been plugging away at this, just basically babying it. It's soft material. You have to be careful not to snag it. If you buy some bulk material, I would recommend you also get what they call an applicator kit, which includes 2 mixer bottles and a little rubber squeegee. I have one of those rubber squeegees here somewhere, but I can't seem to put my hand on it. So anyway, regardless, what I did was I just spray my hands with some of this, and it actually allows me to slide across the top, the dry part of the film, and just keep working it into the edges. Pull and stretch if need be. The edges now, where you'll get little bubbles popping up here are the edges, but as the slip solution underneath dries out, those will get stickier and stickier. And this edge, for example, this little air bubble that seems to be coming up right on the edge will lift, but I'll push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down for a few minutes, and eventually it'll stay down. It's popping back up again, but I had a big one down here. That's all dried up and stuck. And although you can't see it in the film, I've wrapped the film around this leading edge of this panel and on the bottom too. And I've had to do a little cut here so I could fold it around, much the same way as you would if you're wrapping a present. I've wrapped those around, and this turned out quite nice. So what I'm going to do is let that sit, and I'll work on some of the other panels. The next bit I'll show you me spraying the film and then putting it on the beside the tank. So it's all patience. I've probably been at this panel, just for interest's sake, probably 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. The process is this. First of all, before I get too deep into this, you make sure when you cut your templates, the easiest thing to do is when you have your when you cut your panel sort, take your template, lay it down on a table, trace it out with a marker, then flip it over and move it sideways and trace out a second one. That way you know you get mirror opposites. Big mistake some people do is lay it once like this, the template, and then move it and cut a second one, which would effectively be one for the left side, because as you know, it'd be a mirror side. Just be careful of that mistake. I've made that one. That's why I always recommend, if you're going to buy bulk film, buy some extra stuff, just in case you do bonehead things like I would do. So this particular piece fits right here. I'm going like that. Now I could have been a little more artistic and trimmed that edge up a bit more, but I think this will do the trick for now. I already foresee there's going to be problems here. What you'll see when I lay this on is that the edges will be sharp, but there'll be a big bubble here. And as I press that in, we'll get pulls all around the outer edge. But typically what you'll have to do is stretch the outer edge, effectively around the inverted ball, if you will. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. As you can see, it's the bubbles gradually disappear just by working it. It's hard to explain until you work with this stuff, but it's very soft, almost gooey. Not gooey in the sense that it's sticky, but it's gooey in the sense that it stretches much the same as a I don't know, a thick piece of taffy, hot taffy or something. It's very responsive, and one thing you do have to be careful of, because it is a soft material, is that it can, from the heat, get too soft and actually snag in your hands or with your squeegee. So it's one of those things, you stretch it, don't be afraid to stretch it. But when you're sliding your hand or a squeegee along it, if you're moving too aggressively and you catch an edge, it will actually snag, and those snags do show, so just be cautious. As you can see, this one's going on a little easier than I thought. I expected with the deep cutout here that I would be wrestling with it a bit more, and I will tell you this edge is a little too close to the corner of the panel, but I'm going to live with it, and I'll just fold it down once that slip solution dries out from underneath it a little bit. So now it's just this last piece here, which I'll work, and gradually get it to sit down in. So actually this has gone much quicker than I thought, this particular panel. You can see just the last little bubbles there. I'll just keep pressing those up. So as you do this, a couple things you should note, and nothing to worry about. Firstly, you'll get little splotches, and they're about the size of 2 or 3 millimeters across, little splotches of cloudiness. That's just the slip solution before it dissolves into the adhesive. So a lot of that will disappear, not all of it. So if you have big areas, it's best that you try to gently squeeze them to the edge, and as you squeeze them to the edge, you'll see a little splotch of soapy water squeeze out from underneath the film. You'll also get bubbles of, looks like actually a thickened area, and that's when it's just pure water under there. And those too dissolve in, but those are also things that if you can just work them to the edge, and they'll squeeze out in a little splotch of water. Now, I made comments earlier in the video about buying a kit, and when you buy a kit, typically they, the good ones anyway, have been cut in such a way that they're expected to stretch in certain areas. So if you lay one of the panels down on the surface and it looks too narrow, chances are that as you apply it, you'll need to stretch it to fit properly, and the stretching will fill out those areas. And that's what I wanted to refer to here, is when I said earlier, this panel here, because it's so deep, and I've actually stretched that, not a lot of effort, but I did stretch that with my hand. Essentially, I've stretched it so much that part of what I've cut is actually hanging off the edge of the panel, which isn't that bad. I'll probably just roll it under with my thumb, but that's something to be aware of when you put this on your headlights. If you put it on your headlights, you can either use this thickness, or they actually make a thicker film for your head, specifically for headlights, because they're a bit more fragile and they need more of a cushion of film. But when you do your headlights, you'll notice they're very foggy. They tend to be very foggy for a day or two, and that all goes away. Headlights, surprisingly, most of them are not very compound. They're simple curves to cover, and they cover very easily. Anyway, so this panel's done, and then we'll head to the back here and do the hard bag. You'll see as I do this this back one, and as you do it, I hope you try it. The more you stretch, and it's thick. That's how the really good guys and gals who do this every day, they understand how to stretch this stuff. When it stretches, it fits over everything so much better. You can see there as I'm pushing it down, it just sucks right down onto the panel. Very nice. There we go. So that's going to save a lot of scratches on this piece of hardware, I'll tell you right now. One thing you should keep handy, and I do, is a microfiber cloth. Now this just happened to be one I have at hand, but I got a whole bag of them over there. They're soft, and as you squeeze some of the slip fluid out from underneath the film, this is great stuff to soak it up on the way out the door type thing. So It's very handy to have. So I get a couple of those. You can buy them anywhere now. You should also invest in a good, buy a decent hobby knife or a razor blade, because sometimes you will find you'll stretch and pull this stuff right off the end of a panel and everything will look good except for just a little bit extra that just doesn't look right. So spray your fingers, keep your fingers always sprayed with this stuff. Peel it back and you can trim it off with a very, very sharp razor blade. It'll cut very nice. I'm always hesitant to cut too much on the bike or the car, simply because you'll never get as nice, clean, and sweep of an edge that you would if you cut it with scissors, unserrated scissors by the way, but scissors on a table. So even as I trace my template onto the film that I'm going to be working with, I always try to make the final cut with the scissors as smooth and straight as possible, or a sweep. I try to round my edges at the corner if I'm cutting them on my own. You'll find if you buy a kit from a good manufacturer, and there's a lot out there that they all sell the 3M, or a lot of them sell the 3M film, but the cutting and the measures aren't as good with some of the manufacturers as they are with others. So assuming you do buy from a decent manufacturer, decent cutter, a kit, you'll find the edges are all radiused, the corners are all radiused, and they fit on quite nicely. They'll even stretch. They'll fit over the panel you're working on quite easily. There we go. So I'm all done. I'm going to do the other side, much the same fashion. I did find that the front panel was actually the most difficult as far as time. This panel here maybe took me 5 minutes. The panel that my knee hits may have taken 7 or 8 minutes, but the panel up front probably took 15 to 20 minutes. So I would set aside, if you're doing something similar to what I've done as far as what you cover, I would put aside a good 2 hours for the job. So that's cleaning the bike, cleaning your hands, cutting the templates, and laying the panels. And that's working through it quickly. If you give yourself an extra hour on top of that, you happen to come across a snag or two, pardon the pun, or you have to recut a panel, or if you have to trim some of the panels after they're on the bike, which I don't recommend, but if you do have to do that, then give yourself an extra hour. So good afternoon. Avoid doing it in the sunlight, simply because the heat of the sun will not only heat up well, in this case it's a dark blue motorcycle, but it'll also heat up even if you're on a white car, it'll heat up the film, and that film, when it gets too hot, is much more likely to snag when you're spreading it, even if you're being gentle with your hands. So it's an easy job, and I do recommend you do it, especially back here. All the best, and hope to see you again soon. Take care.